Hi everyone, my name is Wana and you are watching Culture Diaries. Now this week on the show, our guest, I don't even know how do I start introducing him. He's a musician, he's a band conductor, he's an artistic curator, he's so many things. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Ade Bantu. Welcome, Ade.
Thanks for having me. Welcome to my space.
Thank you so much. I mean, I love the whole minimalist feel. Very feng shui.
Yeah, feng shui, you know, very Japanese.
African feng shui.
Yeah, in Lagos, you get overwhelmed. Yeah. Generator, traffic, everything is too much.
But I think also, like, even just ventilation as well. See, before we know it, we're talking about design.
We can go there, we can go there, we can go there.
Let us talk about this thing, this monster that you created, that is a fixture in the Lagos city soundscape called Afropolitan Vibes. 6 years old now.
Yes, it is.
I remember when it started as part of, it was the first edition of Lagos Live Festival that was part of the Goethe Institute.
Exactly.
Because I hosted it, of course. Yeah, and that was like the beginning.
Very true.
And then, did you think it was going to turn into this?
I had hoped, but not in my wildest dreams because, you know, Lagos is a very tough terrain. And the Lagosians are spoiled. Sometimes they can be a bit fickle, you know, they just jump from one trend to the other. Loyalty is very difficult to come by, especially when it comes to the audience.
Yeah.
And so to have people actually dedicate their time, their resources, and to say we're part of this movement, we see ourselves as part of Afropolitan Vibes, it's a big deal for me.
I mean, as much as I'm laughing about the fact that you talk about the audience being fickle, loyalty is such a difficult thing here, and I always feel like, coming from Lagos, I say to people that Lagos is like an Ashoebi paradise, so everybody's in uniform,
exactly,
right? You know, so if you're not doing this one thing, it's so difficult to find, like, even niche markets, like, it's so difficult for that to exist as well. And this now brings me to the beginning of Afropolitan Vibes when it started, and literally it was like maybe 20-30 people.
It wasn't, I knew everyone there. Maybe
dancing on stage as well.
Exactly.
But what do you think was the thing that made people sort of start converting? Because I feel like it was a conversion that happened. It literally felt like a church that started, and then you started converting people.
Yeah, well, church, I'm not into that. But anyways, but I get your point. Yeah. Basically, my idea, my hope when I started Afropolitan Vibes was I wanted to convince people to buy into the idea. That's why we didn't charge a gate fee. We said, okay, here's what you do. You come into the park, I think they were charging 200 or 300 naira, park entry fee, and then the show itself is free. And I wanted them to experience it. I was convinced once you experience it, you want to come back. And what I have to do is deliver a quality show. And I had gone around Nigeria for years watching different shows and seeing where the flaws were. Shows were not on time. A lot of artists were winging it on stage because everyone was freestyling. Basically, okay, what happens is one artist does their set, then they have to find a bridge to roll over to the next. So they'll slot in a comedian, an MC. People are bored. So I said, how about doing a 3-hour tight show? No interruption, nothing. One flow, everything is well rehearsed. And the audience is taken seriously for the first time, and we start on time. And at first people were like, no way, Nigerians will not come on time. But after 2-3 experiences where people came and they came late, they were like, they seem to be really keen on keeping to time. They're sticklers for time. So they followed that energy, and the same thing with the show and the performances. And what literally happened was people would come, experience it, and go, wow, this is different. Next time they'll come with colleagues, with friends, and it grew word of mouth. Because up to date, we don't have a dedicated media partner or anything. And having a show where you have up to 2,000, sometimes we've even had up to close to 3,000 people in attendance, it's a big, big deal in Lagos. And they've even moved venues with us. We started in the amphitheater, a very small space at Freedom Park. Then we took over the park. Then it became too small. Then we moved to Muri-Okola Park. And whenever we were kind of like challenging ourselves, saying, okay, where do we go from here? The audience would follow. And they bought into it. For me, I always wanted a movement. I want people to see themselves as stakeholders, to say, this is my thing, to have some kind of ownership, a buy-in. And I think that has happened, and that is what has sustained Afropolitan Vibes.
I mean, I think one of the powerful things about Afropolitan Vibes is literally the vibe. I think it's that vibe that it creates, and I think people wanted to just be a part of that vibe in itself. One other thing I'm interested in is it almost also felt like a training ground for musicians to see if they can really perform with live with a band, right? Because you'd have these artists that you feature on stage, and they have to work with the band. They also have to really engage the audience, because the audience is rowdy. They're in a vibe mode. So nobody is in VIP trying to like feel cool as well. And how was that for the artists that you were working with?
It's interesting because you have the younger artists who are not used to working with a live band, or they don't have the experience. And what you have to do is make them buy into the idea, because most of the time they're established in the pop market and no one wants to embarrass themselves on stage. Everyone wants to play safe, especially in that pop field. So when you now tell them, okay, we'll have to perform live with a live band and we're going to reinterpret your music, you're asking a lot from them, and they have to trust you 110%. So you get them to come to rehearsals, they work on their craft, and then when they're on stage, you see something always happens to them. There's that moment of nervousness because they've never seen a crowd like that. I mean, it's literally mixed upside down.
See that.
They come out and they're like, you know, even the coolest guy with the best swagger or whatever comes there and just like, where am I? How come there's so many? They look around, you know, there's their Oyimbos, their Agberos, their students, you know, everything's just mixed, and you're like, is this Lagos? Where am I? And the crowd is in your face. They're literally this close to the stage. Yeah. And then once they understand that all I need to do is let go and then just perform, be myself, you just see pure magic. And then everybody leaves that stage like glowing. And what also happens is you kind of plant a seed in them, consciously or unconsciously, because they now are open to the idea of maybe also working with a band when it comes to their own performance and their set. And what has happened is the likes of Yemi Alade and others that have performed at Afropolitan Vibes have bought into this live music idea. I think we've been at the forefront of pushing live music, because a lot of people were cutting corners, promoters, artists, labels, everyone. They were like, oh, we'll just get a DJ, track 1, 2, 3, do it. The audience doesn't really care. And then we're done with it and we move on to the next chapter. But now what you have now is an audience that is more refined when it comes to their taste. Not that we were never like that. At some point it just nosedived. I mean, the whole live music scene was killed because of military dictatorship, curfews where people couldn't go out and whatever, you know. So it kind of died. The church kind of took the remnants of the live music scene and bought them over, which is understandable. People need to have a livelihood and sustain themselves. So back to where we are now, we have a situation which is very interesting. Nigerian pop music is going global, and a lot of artists are understanding if you want to tour, you need a band. So even a Wizkid has to work with a band. Even a Davido has a live band now, Burner obviously, and all of that. And I think Afropolitan Vibes has played a crucial role in making people appreciate live music, and the artist also understanding that that is the only way forward.
But what do you think it is about, I feel like we don't demand, enough of artists, especially once they become big. It's like they come and they perform as though it's a party, and we're okay with that. Why aren't we holding them accountable when it comes to their performances?
I think it's because the audience themselves are a bit lost, when we come from like a disco, a club culture. So when you come from club culture and there's very little live music happening around you. So say Lagos, for example, 20 million people is the megapolis of the continent. But when it comes to live music, there are very few venues where you can go on a regular to appreciate live music. So you have cover bands. That's standard engagement with live music. You're at a wedding, you're at a birthday party, or somewhere in a hotel, and you have this band playing Bob Marley or all the hit songs, and that's about it in terms of experiencing live music.
Like ambient music in the background.
So no one really cares. And the only alternative is Femi Kuti's Shrine, and that's about it. Or an Owambe. That's the end. So when you don't have means of engagement and the audience isn't groomed in terms of taste, in terms of being open and appreciating the craftsmanship of music, so when that audience hasn't really learned the rudiments of live music, there's no way they can demand it from their stars, you know. So that's what we have to work on. We need regular engagement. There's no jazz music scene here at all. Jazz music is literally dead. Other genres of music, rock, funk, you know, because Nigerians are sophisticated people. We listen to everything, but live engagement with this mega palette of music is not there, you know. So even what we're doing with Afropolitan Vibes, yeah, it is good, but it's not enough. But then again, what we have now is that a lot of artists are now feeling more comfortable pulling off their own festivals. Palm Wine Festival, for example, Show Them Camp, they're creating their own alternative movement. You have the Odusis, the Joy Salongs, and all of them. Young kids, early 20s, that are all into live music. They have their open mic kind of thing.
The Altair crew.
You see, that's a new one for me. So you see, all is not lost.
Yeah.
I hope that this year will be a turning point, because what is going to happen is Nigerian artists are going to have to prove themselves at mega festivals, Coachella, South by Southwest. You know, they'll be doing other big festivals in Europe, and if you don't deliver, it's very basic. You don't deliver, they're not booking you anymore, and then you lose jobs, because once you mess up Coachella, no one's going to call you for any other big festival. So you have to come with your A game now, and you have to invest not in your Porsche but in your band.
Something I also find really like you do with Afropolitan Vibes. We talk about the vibe, we've talked about live performance, but it's also in many ways a sort of historical preservation project with music, where you're reintroducing legends, you're reintroducing traditional Nigerian music to new audiences, even reintroducing them to old audiences as well. How important is that for you? Because for me, it takes it from just a monthly or quarterly concert to something that, you know, I can see videos of in a gallery space or in a museum, like as I said, a historical preservation project as well.
History for me is very, very important. We have to understand who we are, and the only way we can actually kind of like transform ourselves and create something that will stand the test of time is to engage our elders. And we're very forgetful people, you know. It's the nature of the environment and the hustle as well here, where people are just basically trying to survive. So a lot of things just get thrown off the side of the road, you know. So what we're trying to do is remind people that we have a musical legacy and there is a history, and we need to connect to it. So if I have, like, say, Bright Chimeze with Omoumi and Johnny Drill on the same bill, that is a conversation that is going on. Johnny Drill comes with his fans, sets especially very young women that are totally into his music, an alternative space as well that he's created with his music. They come there. Omoumi comes with her crowd, and then you have a complete different crowd that would never come to Afropolitan Vibes, but they're like, Bright Chimeze, this is a time of my life. And then what you have is that at some point everything flips during the show. So a Bright Chimeze comes on, and then you see young people, all of a sudden some light bulb goes up, like bang, like, wait a minute, I know this song. They don't know the artist name.
My granddad listened to it. Yeah.
My mom, my dad, they were dancing to it. So all of a sudden something happens in them, and they get all like over emotional. I've seen people literally like cry there and just be like shaking, and you're like, what's happening? And they're like, you can't understand. This means so much when I was a kid. This is memories, they're flooded by it. And I want more of that to happen, because we need to appreciate, we need to preserve, and most importantly, we need to document. Because what will happen is at some point, some European, American kid, some white kid will come here and tell us our own history and narrate it to us, because we're lost. For me, the most heartbreaking moment ever as an artist was when I was in Ghana. I went to the School of Music, and then I was there, and I saw high life legends teaching young white American students the rudiments of palm wine music, and I'm like, there's something wrong here. And there were no African kids around them trying to learn the palm wine guitar style. I was like, okay, this is a problem. Case in point, Abel Taylor, he was the one teaching. And Abel Taylor is Fela's contemporary. He studied with Fela. He's one of Ghanaian's greatest musicians. He's still alive. He still writes music, still tours. But when I saw him in that situation, that was like 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I was like, something needs to change. And we helped him create a career that has been able to sustain him now, and he's making good money off it. So for me, once I saw that, I was like, there's a problem here. Because growing up in Europe, it's the exact opposite. You know, these people are like demigods, you know. Even if they play in front of an audience of 50, 60, the states make sure that there are subsidies for them. They make sure they get their allowances. They subsidize their tours. They document everything. Even if the person is not a writer, they're like, please just narrate. We'll get somebody to document it. We'll put it in book form and video form. And all of that is kind of missing here. It's a lot of work because I only came here to be a musician. All of a sudden, I'm a curator, a historian, educator, you know, motivator, you know, and it's not like we're making a lot of money from Afropolitan Vibes. We barely break even. But we've created a culture, a movement, and that is what is important. And most importantly, we've inspired others because I see it. This December, there were so many festivals in Lagos, and I think it also has to do partially with Afropolitan Vibes as well, that people said, okay, they've created their own lane, we can create ours as well.
I mean, I think, you know, you just mentioned this thing about the fact that you came here to be a musician and then you're forced to be many other things as well. Do you welcome all those new responsibilities? Or do you sometimes feel like, I really don't want to be doing this?
It's kind of a catch-22. I love it because I love like expanding my horizon. I love learning. That's just my character. If I get the right people to teach me, and I've had a lot of incredible teachers that walk me through things, I get to grow as an artist and I get to see the world in a much brighter space and light. But then again, at the same time, it can be very distracting because you're multitasking the whole time, and you kind of like must try to also focus on what you do best as well, because I want to write good songs, I want to compose good songs, but when I'm busy trying to convince artists to come to Afropolitan Vibes, when I'm curating, when I'm begging, when I'm massaging their egos, everything, I don't get the time. So and Lagos is a very tough city, you know, because you're always trying to survive. So sometimes I wish there were other structures in place like management, you know, or people that are just as altruistic as I am, but I guess they're not that many, that could assist, you know, in the process. But so far so good, knock on wood. But I think I'm also getting to a point where I'm trying to like refocus again and go back to the basics, because also in a city like Lagos, there's too much hype, too much noise. And sometimes you lose yourself in it, you know, like I just want to just do my work right, you know. I don't want just to be a local champion and people are just applauding me. I feel like the next challenge is, how do I engage a global audience with the Afropolitan Vibes philosophy? How do I travel with it? And what can I make of the conversations that are happening on stage, you know? So that is like where I want to see us go to this year and next year, 2019, 2020.
You've been 10 years in Nigeria.
Yes, 10 years.
Because we met 10 years ago, right?
True.
My brother, January
It's been a minute. It's been
10 years in Nigeria, and you know, you come from this very highly politically charged musical environment. And I think there's always a difference when you're creating work from outside. and when you come on ground, as we say on ground, when you're on the ground, and I want to know those differences for you, and what has changed, what have you learned in the process?
My sister, I don't even know where to start. You know, being in Germany, being in the diaspora, you give your all. You're flying that Nigerian, African, Pan-Africanist flag. You're so obsessed with all the theories. You've read it all. You've discussed it with other intellectuals, you know, musicians, whatever. And then now you come back home, people look at you like, oh, Benny, I beg, just forget this thing, Joe. Just give us music. Why? Then stop the talking, Joe. Just play the music. And you're like, but you guys love fella. That one, fella, bros, you're not fella. And I'm not trying to be a fella, but I cannot not comment on what is happening. You know, it's impossible. I have to document my times. And so it's been very difficult, frustrating, and depressing, and a very, very lonely journey as well, because you feel like you are the only one that's seen certain things that others are absolutely denying, you know. Like, say, look at what is happening in terms of migration and how many thousands, hundreds and thousands of Nigerians are being swallowed up by the ocean, dying in the desert, you know, and we're absolutely denying it. You know, young Nigerian women that are being taken to Dubai as housemaids, you know, literally as slaves, you know, and we're not talking about our people stranded in Libya. That's just one of many things, you know, and we have an election coming up in a couple of weeks, and no musician is recording songs about the realities on ground. No one is saying we need to destroy this system. We need to create something that works for all of us. We're not calling out names. No one is saying Atiku Ole, Buhari Ole, recording those songs. You know, for us, it's all about the Forbes list. Oh, Dangote is #1 on the Forbes list. That's the thing that would trend, you know. Oh, Adenuga got an award from Macron, a dodgy award, because he gave Alliance Française a building, you know. And people are not, that's why I don't engage on Twitter and things like that. And people always say, oh, you need to do more on social media. It's all knee-jerk reaction, because we don't take a step back and just say, okay, what is happening here? There's a smoke screen, we need to see beyond it. So back to the question, it is very, very difficult. And it is also frustrating, because we become so cynical, you know. We become disillusioned, absolutely, you know, as a people, you know.
But can you see why people are disillusioned, though? Because people are seeing people who used to be their heroes and who would fight for things. The next thing, you know, in the name of survival, you know, flip the other way, and so everyone is cynical about everybody. No one feels like you can trust anyone. It's like you don't know until they put $100 million in your bank account what you'll do the next day, you know.
I understand where they're coming from, but we need to kind of like get back to the core of who we are. We need certain people, for lack of a better term, maybe heroes, I don't even know what to call them, people that are dignified, people that are doing the right thing, you know. I mean, I've had political parties call up my band and say, okay, come and do campaign for us. We're not going to do it. My band, we've had arguments upon arguments. Bros, now good money, now fast money, waiting. You can still sing your song there. Nobody's saying not to sing your song, but let's do it. But then you get them to understand that we cannot do it, because once you compromise yourself, that's the end, you know. So what we're trying to do is make sure that that we maintain some form of dignity. It is very lonesome. I'm not rich. I don't get called to certain shows, and it has nothing to do with the quality of the music. People just avoid you like the plague. But then when I see what Shehu and Femi are doing, for example, it gives me hope, because they're continuing with their father's legacy. So maybe it is we're condemned or to always be on the sidelines. But if I can inspire one or two kids, inspire something in people, I'm more than happy. I need to do it. I have to do it, because we have to chart a way forward, or else this place is going to implode.
But there's also this thing where we also come from a community that doesn't preserve the memories of our fighters, right? So people fight and they die, and that's the end. In fact, they die with their families in penury, you know, and nothing comes out of it. So people are like, you know, if you die in Nigeria will not even put a plaque up for you. Not that you're doing all of this for that, but if you're even when people are even talking about like leaving legacy for the next generation doesn't even know who you are because there's no preservation of memory.
Preservation of memory. I think it's very important that we preserve legacies and that we understand that there's some kind of interconnection going on, and in order to understand where we are, we have to look back, that Sankofa thing. Yeah. The problem is that a lot of the information is accessible, but not readily accessible if you're in Nigeria. So you have to go out to the archives in the UK, Germany, and whatever. If you are lucky, at all. For me, I'm conscious of this fact, and that's why I try my best to document my thoughts. So it's beyond music, like what is going on in me, even if I just keep a diary and maybe somebody is going to make sense of it in 10, 20 years.
I also feel like you've learned so much in the last, say, 10 years, right? So moving from Germany, being this hyper idealistic, you talk from being socialist to coming to a space that is very ultra capitalist. People are disillusioned, people are very much one way and not necessarily independent thinkers. We're also in a space of the survival of the fittest type of space. Like, so there's a lot of, so what are some of the biggest things that you've learned where you've had to, and how you've been able to say, I want to still be myself, but I still want to be able to function in this kind of space? Because I think that's a reality that people have to deal with.
So I've created a tribe around me, a community of people that help me remember who I am, because you forget it easily. When you see how people just readily sell their ideals, for whatever, for a position, there's so many people that I know that were very tight friends that have been extremely compromised, So what I do is I have this little posse, not of yes men or yes women, people that engage me constantly. And when I throw ideas at them, we argue endlessly, And it's genuine because I respect them. I respect their intellectual capacity. And I'm talking about, I don't only hang around musicians, so it's painters, writers. I sit down with my gate man, we talk for hours, I try to understand his Nigeria. I travel a lot outside Lagos because Lagos is also insular, it's like a bubble. But when I go to, say, Kano, Kaduna, when I do workshops there, when I go to Bariga, when I go to Port Harcourt, other places, when I take the train from Abuja to KD, that's how I protect myself, and that's how I remind myself of who I am and what I am standing for and what I hope to achieve. So I always make sure that I avoid the hype as much as I can. I'm not really into red carpets, all of those things. I don't need to be over celebrated. I don't need it, really. It's not me. I've always been about a collective. So what I do is I just sneak out. I go experience things. I'm in Agege somewhere at one mama put joint. I'm drinking some agbo, and I'm just listening. Like I'm a fly on the wall, and that has helped me to maintain some form of sanity. Yes, Sinatra, I did it my way.
Oh, okay. Somebody else has said that before as well. I can't remember.
It's actually the song I've just told my people. I'm like, if I die, please play. It's very loud. All the versions that exist. None whatsoever. I have no regrets.
Really?
Although, no, I think that's very cliched.
Yeah, exactly.
I wish. No. My big regret is not having enough time for family. Okay. That's like a big regret because I've sacrificed a lot, and when it comes to family. Yeah. Okay. One piece of advice: don't be so angry. I think a passion fruit. Why? I just love it. There's something it does to your taste buds. Passion fruit is like, you look at it and if you've never ever tasted it before, you can't even imagine it. Like, how is it going to be very fruity, juicy, or all that? And then it kind of pops in your mouth, So it's always like these different sensations happening at the same time and multiple effects they create in you. I love that. I believe 1,000,000,000% that art can change the world because it's about emotions. When you create something and people can connect to it deeply, it's it's the most spiritual, I think, of experiences. And when it's absolutely genuine and it comes from the most genuine of spaces within the creator, it is divine. And because of that, people connect to it on a level that is metaphysical, and therefore it leaves traces in them, so it's something that keeps them engaged beyond the moment. And that's why I believe it can change the world.
Ade Bantu, thank you for being on Culture Diaries.
Thank you!
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thank you all so much for staying with us. Big shout out, of course, to Ade Bantu for the wonderful conversation. You know that me and him can talk for like 10 hours. You can, of course, check out all the stuff I get up to on my website is 101.net, and all my other information is at the bottom of the screen. Until next time, you have been watching Culture Diaries.